Okay, so paragraph 844, the clearest representation of polarity of the psyche. Okay, so that's when we're talking about conscience, we're talking about this polarity. It can only be explained in terms of psychic energy, i.e., potential based on opposites. Then Jung quotes Faust, Goethe's Faust, when he says, "Two souls, alas, are housed within my breast, which not human charioteer can master," as the fate of Faust clearly indicates. So it's psychic energy that comes up when you're in a conflict of duties situation, and that's when it goes boing. Okay, so paragraph 845, the psychologist can criticize metaphysics as a human assertion, but he is not in a position to make such assertions himself. And so he says, thus the Vox Dei hypothesis is another subjective exclamation whose purpose it is to underline the numinous character of the moral reaction. Conscience is a manifestation of mana, of the extraordinarily powerful, a quality which is the especial peculiarity of archetypal ideas. And so when you hit an archetype, it's going to pop up in your conscience. Archetype is a natural phenomenon and has a morally ambivalent character. It's amoral, like Yahweh, the God image, moral qualities only through an act of cognition. He says, that is why to burn a heretic is on the one hand a pious and meritorious act, on the other hand a brutal manifestation of ruthless and savage lust for revenge. And John Hus, who was being burned at the stake, said, "O sancta simplicitas," when he was referring to an old woman who came to his flame and was adding kindling to his flame. Daniel says E equals MC squared only proves the matter is energy and vice versa. It's not a complete theory of everything. Quantum physics is not yet compatible with it, but E8 seems promising. They might solve it soon. I have my doubts about the solution of quantum physics or quantum mechanics, whatever it is. Paragraph 846. Morally indifferent as a biological phenomenon, but can profoundly influence human behavior. And here's where I brought in Abraham and Isaac. So we jumped the gun earlier to talk about them. But the point is that the biological phenomenon is morally indifferent, but once it's functional and the complex is active and alive in your psyche, it can certainly profoundly influence your behavior. Paragraph 847, motifs everywhere, they impress, influence, and fascinate us. Manifests anywhere, anytime. So we get conscience pangs all the time. So in paragraph 848, Dr. Jung explains that the Vox Dei in this case is an amplification tendency peculiar to the archetype. On the primitive level, there are not accidents, only intentional designs. And again, Abraham and Isaac brought up, but also the Eskimo and so on. So, you know, if you're primitive, you see meaning in everything. Oh, that's because I have my lucky charm with me today. And so that's kind of a primitive level. Okay, so paragraph 849, Psychoid Architecture, irrepresentable and unconscious essence of the archetype. Synchronicity in telepathy, precognition, etc. Collective unconscious, spaceless, and timeless quality. So I did a session a few weeks ago on the psychoid, and I did a reading on the psychoid. You can find it on the on the YouTube channel. I urge you to listen to that, because breaking into the psychoid level is a way of getting to mental healing, and it's a method that Jungian analysts use that other psychotherapists do not use. And today, when I was in my meditation group, the reason that woman had that paternalistic comment to me was because I had asked the question, did she know what the psychoid level was? They had never heard of the psychoid level. But obviously, all of us right now in this conversation are at least on the fringes of the psychoid level, because we're in another time and space. We're not seeing the outside world. We're in a conversation now. It happens in every conversation. It doesn't have to be a psychoanalysis, but when you have an interaction with someone else and you're sharing things, oh, this, and you said this, and I'll say this, and I'll say this, and I'll say this, you're entering into a psychoid level. And of course, in analysis, they're looking to get down to the archetypal issues. So they're looking for specific things. But, you know, if you have a good conversation with a good friend, that's that sort of thing. The conscience is down in that level. Okay, so paragraph 850, synchronicity has to be considered. It's acausal. It's not always a subjective moral reaction. Fear and other emotions can be felt from another source. But for example, again, in Abraham and Isaac, it's not Abraham deciding based on the moral code what should be. He had gone up on the mountain based on the moral code, but conscience kicked up his vision for him. No one has perfectly good conscience. Sometimes self-criticism can go too far. Maybe it is the other person who should have had the bad conscience. And he gives this example of Heinrich Schalke, who was at an inn and he was eating lunch and he saw a young man across the room, and he had a vision that this young man had broken into a desk and stole some money. And he was so convinced of that vision that he went over, he confronted this young man on the spot, and sure enough, the young man confessed on the spot. And Heinrich had seen this in his mind's eye. So these things can pass through the collective unconscious. In 851 now, it can be expressed in a dream or a disagreeable feeling. In 852, we have to remember that not every pang of conscience deserves attention. Do not injure the ethical values of another person. And so this is an ethical consideration among psychoanalysts, and I think all of us should keep that ethical value in mind, that we shouldn't be attacking other people's religions, for example. You know, when I was first getting drawn into this, some of you will remember that I was pretty exercised about the fact that my daughter had been taught by fundamentalists to tell me that I was going to hell. And she did that on her 22nd birthday. And for a long time, I just wanted revenge. I wanted to fight back. And I was really angry that anyone would teach a child to say that to a parent. And in keeping with what we're talking about here, that's obviously an unethical thing to do. But I'm convinced by what Dr. Jung has said that we also shouldn't be attacking other people's religions, because they have a psychic container that they have to live their lives in too. And if we break that, then we don't know what will happen then. And, you know, in my daughter's case, I left the family when she was 8 years old. And obviously that was a shock to her. And so she found religion as a result of that. And I have to be very careful about respecting her religion now. And it's not because we've ever had any big run-ins about it. We have had a couple of little skirmishes, but the most recent one was 20 years ago. So anyway, in a conversation about conscience, if a conversation is fundamental, essential, numinous, and a certain rapport is felt, then you enter into a participation mystique. And this is like the term rebus, okay, R-E-B-I-S. It's not, the term rebus also refers to books in the funny papers where they have pictures in place of words or emoticons and that sort of thing. That's not what it is. Rebus is a relationship that you build up with other people, and the most important one is with your spouse. And so when you enter into this numinous rapport, and this rapport is felt back and forth, it passes unconsciously, but it becomes a participation mystique. What Jung says here is that the individual psychic spheres interpenetrate, and you no longer know what belongs to whom. And so in the same context as Heinrich up above, where he had this vision about this kid stealing money out of a desk, once you're spending your life with a life partner, you don't know what in the unconscious is yours and what's theirs. So then Dr. Jung goes on, although the first step in the cognitive process is to discriminate and divide, at the second step it will unite what has been divided, and an explanation will be satisfactory only when it achieves synthesis. So you can divide, but then you have to go for synthesis. Yami asks if anyone has read J.B. Haldane, very rare children's book, My Friend Mr. Leakey. It's quite bizarre. Published in 1937. You can find it in full Stanford library site. Okay, I don't know that one, but I will look it up. So at paragraph 853, we have to give priority to conscience. Psyche itself presents, it's not a moral code. It behaves like God, like the Vox Dei, but beware of indisputable faith that precludes discussion, okay, because you have to live in the 21st century. Your Vox Dei doesn't. Your Vox Dei got built in when you were born. Paragraph 854, Vox Dei, the foundation, is the numen. It is as much a phenomenon as conscience itself. It's an inalienable part of nature. So, as I was saying, it was built into you. It's part of nature, and it deserves attention, but you, in the end, have to decide what can work in the 21st century. Most often, a real or supposed deviation from the moral code. Okay, so 855, he's finally saying that conscience is most often where there is a real or supposed deviation from the moral code, from the logos. It's like primitive fear of anything unusual. It may be moral, but can raise no claim to being ethical. It deserves this only when it is reflective, conscious scrutiny. So it's ethical after you have tested the spirits. Only when a fundamental doubt arises, it's a conflict of duty. The moral code is invoked in vain. So when the moral code isn't working, then you have to make a decision, and it's all on you. Only the creative power of the ethos that expresses the whole man can pronounce the final judgment. And there are two sources. One is rational and one is irrational. it's a special case of the transcendent function. So it's, the conscience is a special case of this function that intermediates between consciousness and unconsciousness. Sorry, paragraph 856. The ultimate decision comes from dark, deep waters, suppressing one of the opposites, but if sufficiently conscientious, the conflict can be endured to the end, and a creative solution emerges, which is produced by the constellated archetype, the Vox Dei. If you have a conflict of duty, if you can live with that conflict of duty on an ongoing basis, that may be the best solution. But ultimately, there will be a synthesis where one side or the other probably wins. And most often, this is going to be your natural side, and that's the Vox Dei, because this only comes up when there's a conflict with the moral code. 857, Dr. Jung summarizes there are two factors. One is recollection and admonition of and by the mores, and the second factor is the conflict of duty and its solution through creation of a synthesis, a third standpoint. And so it's the moral versus the ethical aspect of conscience. Thomas says, I can see conscience as part of the transcendent function, so that's exactly what Dr. Jung was saying. Daniel says, if I can recommend a book too, Flatland by Edwin Abbott from 1884. It's a bit bizarre too, but really awakening my mind to how we can be mirrored in many dimensions that we can't quite comprehend yet. And Daniel says it's pretty famous. You've probably read it. And Thomas says, thanks, Daniel. She'll look them up. Okay, and I will look them up also, but I probably will not read anything that I haven't already read, because I'm so focused on trying to understand Dr. Jung's work and convey that understanding to others. As all of you may know, we're running an advanced seminar on Wednesday now, where we've moved the date to Wednesday at 1:30 p.m. I would welcome anybody who wants to join it. We've completed 8 sessions on ion, researches into phenomenology of the self, and we're right in the middle of chapter 5, which is Christ as a symbol of the self. It's very complex work. As of now, we have 26 official members of the advanced reading group. It is conducted in video conference on Zoom, and so if you want to join us, what I'm asking for is a sponsorship on Patreon of $10 a month, which is a bargain considering the fact that I'm trying to give an advanced graduate level course on ion at the moment. And so all of the previous sessions are recorded and are available, so you can join anytime and catch up with where we are. I don't know what we'll do after ion, but we'll talk about that going forward. And do write to me on any topic you wish if you have any thoughts or questions or ideas about what we should be talking about.